You're listening to the Infinite Banking Mastery Podcast. Did you know that you could build a tax-free pool of wealth that's liquid and accessible all your life while building your retirement nest egg? Gain full control of your financial future and stop relying on the government and banks. The wealthy have already discovered this wealth-building secret. Now it's your turn to get financially secure without following the conventional wisdom that keeps you in debt to banks. Now here's your host, Valerie LaRocque.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Infinite Banking Mastery Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season. I sure did. I really love just being home with the kids these last couple weeks of the year. So I took a couple of weeks off myself and tried to just focus on hanging out with the kids, enjoying watching movies, reading books that I like, fun stuff, making cookies, all that fun stuff. Of course, I can't seem to 100% tear myself away from work the whole time necessarily, but it's very, very much toned down. And I really love that. I love just sitting down with a book in my nice cozy living room when it's beautiful with all the Christmas decorations and reading something fun as opposed to only always an industry book or other books that I've been studying. I don't know if I mentioned to any of you on this podcast that I've actually been studying and taking classes for the last about 3 years. I have been studying for my Chartered Financial Consultant designation. And so I have one more class and then I will have acquired and accomplished that designation. And I really can't wait to be done, to be perfectly honest. I really can't wait to be done studying, taking school classes, which I felt done with that roughly 20 years ago. And now here I am again, back in school, taking more classes. But the thing is that you never stop learning in this industry. You've always got to be searching for more knowledge and learning and keeping yourself sharp. So I'm grateful that I've been able to do that. And I'll be really excited when I finally have that designation. So today we are going to continue with Nelson Nash's book that we were going over before, and I've kind of been going through that most of the previous podcasts. I did take a little excursion off into another topic prior to the holidays, but now I want to get back to going through the book and just some more of Nelson's insights that are inside of his book. And so today we're going to talk about the section that is called The Golden Rule. And one of the very first things he points out in this section is whoever has the gold makes the rules. I'm sure you've all heard this saying before, and ain't that the truth, really? He says you will always be at the mercy of the ones who have the gold. Nelson then shares a bit of writing from Jackson Pemberton, who wrote this back in 1976. Jackson wrote something called A New Message on the Constitution, which Nelson puts a snippet of this writing into his book, and there is a lot of wisdom in this passage that Nelson selected. But some of the powerful words that drew my attention are when Jackson Pemberton says, "You have lost the vision of your most fundamental law. Let me show you. You call the National Charter the Constitution of the United States. And that simple phrase contains both the totality of your plight and the seeds of your salvation. For in those 6 words, you reveal your feeling that both you and your law are subject to your government. You are not the slave of government at all, but because you think so, you may as well be. Nay, the Constitution is your servant and the master of your government. It is not the Constitution of the United States. It is the Constitution of the people and for the United States. It is not only the law by which you are governed, it is the law by which you may govern your government. It is not the law by which high-handed politicians may impose their collective will upon you. It is for you to impose it upon them. It does not belong to the government, it belongs to you. It is yours. It is yours to enforce upon your government." Now, I just think this was really well said and very powerful. Yes, I think it's important to remember that the Constitution was written to be of the people and for the people, that the government was put in place to serve the needs and interests of the people. And I believe it's a mistake to allow the government to continue to just grow and grow and grow and get bigger and expand, because remember, the government doesn't make any money. The government makes no money. The only money they have comes from me and you. So as their need for money increases, they have nowhere else to go for that money but me and you. This is why I'm also really hopeful lately that any government waste that is currently going on in our government will be reduced. I'm really hopeful that this is possible in the coming years and in the very near future. Our extra large deficit demands it. Nelson then goes on to talk about how many citizens of our country tend to feel entitled to things that historically we have always worked for ourselves. He says our mindset needs to be turned away from this in order for our citizens to succeed. In another part of this section, I like how he points out a little bit about how people in Japan tend to think when it comes to starting a business. I think this is a really helpful outlook when it comes to looking at a policy as well. Nelson gives an example of the differences in the way that they think about business in Mexico versus Japan, just to give an example of the different cultures and the different ways that people look at business. He shares how in Japan, when you put money into a business, you should expect to lose money for the first 5 years. And then when you start making money, you should plow it all back into the business for the next 5 years. It's only after this time that you should start thinking about taking money out of the business. Now, this is certainly a long-term view, which is much like the long-term view you should have when looking at a life insurance policy, and also what type of long-term view an insurance company has. Insurance companies have a super long-term view. They're not just looking at what's happening now, what's happening in the next 5 years, what are interest rates going to do tomorrow or right away or in the near future. They're looking years and years and decades down the road because they want to be able to pay the death benefits that they have promised to pay 100 years from now. So they're looking way far out, like a century plus, not just what's going to happen in the next few years. So that's how life insurance companies think. They're looking way out into the future. But when it comes to your policy, you might expect to see growth right away. You want to see growth year one. I thought my interest rate was such and such, or my dividends, so they get paid in year one. But much like the Japanese startup example that Nelson gave, or actually like any startup company, there are startup costs to your system. Just like any business you would want to start, you would expect to have initial costs to get the business up and running. So when it comes to life insurance, even though it's not a brick and mortar building, the banking system that you're starting up, now like with a regular physical business where it might be a retail business, a restaurant, coffee shop, a grocery store, startup costs are expected because you have to get inventory, a building, employees, things like that. But you are okay with doing that because you expect your business to become cash flowing, of course, hopefully sooner than later. But sometimes it takes a while for the business to become cash flowing. Whereas with the life insurance policy, that startup cost isn't going to things like inventory, employees, and a building and all that. It's going to the cost of starting up a cash flow machine for you, but also the cost directly, where are they going? They're going to the cost of insurance, the cost of life insurance, the cost of the death benefit, which is an even bigger win if you ask me. Because if we were to compare a regular retail business with a life insurance policy, and let's just say we put $40,000 into each business, $40,000 into the life insurance policy year one, $40,000 into beginning a business, a very small business probably, but $40,000 into starting a business. And at the end of year one, something tragic happened. You passed away. Now, if that happened when you're owning your brand new retail business, your family, if you passed away at that time and that's all you had, they would receive the value of your business. They would have the assets of the business. They would have everything you have in that business or that entity, the inventory and all that stuff. They would also probably have some debt. And the other thing is they probably would have to sell the business pretty quickly if you were the one running it and they had nothing to do with it. Or even if they did, maybe they have too much grief to even continue. So they might have to sell the business in like a fire sale, like hurriedly to get it sold so that they can pay whatever debts they need to pay. Maybe businesses even slow down because you're not there and that's who people came to see. They really like to see you. When a business has to be sold in a hurry like that, oftentimes it results in receiving less money for that business. Now compare this tragic event to what happens if you had just started up a life insurance policy. So you had your life insurance policy, you put $40,000 in, just like we did for the retail business, and then you pass away. Your family would receive the death benefit. They would receive it tax-free, and they would receive that rather than the assets minus the liabilities of your business. So the startup costs for a life insurance policy are for something great, to take care of your family, to take care of your loved ones. If you pass too soon, too young, unexpectedly, it would take care of those who are dependent on your income. So in addition to comparing it to owning an actual retail or physical business, sometimes I will compare to an actual investment, like a retirement investment or any kind of investment in the market. So in 5 years, if you had about $200,000 in your whole life policy versus having $200,000 in your investment in the market, and then something tragic happened and you passed away, just like the previous example, when we look at the life insurance policy, your family would receive, for example, almost $2 million. If you have $200,000 in your policy in cash value in 5 years, of course, it depends on your age and everything else. This particular example is for a 30-year-old. You would have almost $2 million in your death benefit of the account, and that would go to your family income tax free. But if you had that same $200,000 in an investment account and then you passed away, your family would receive the $200,000 minus any taxes that you owe. And if it was an account earmarked for retirement, then there would be an even bigger tax hit in that example. So for me, I would much, much rather build a savings pool of dollars inside of a whole life policy that's paying dividends because it's with a mutual life insurance company that comes with so many more benefits than simply just the growth of the policy, which of course I love because it's guaranteed. And then I can access all the growth income tax free. There are just so many benefits, including a rider if I was to get a heart attack or stage 4 cancer, I can access a portion of my death benefit. Or if I end up needing assisted living or home care, which is astronomically expensive, I'd be able to access up to 50% of my death benefit. And so there are just so many benefits that come with the whole life policy. I would much prefer to build cash value and build wealth in that area all along the way, not having to experience any volatility, just only guaranteed growth. And then at my passing, leave my family a tax-free death benefit that is much larger than the cash value that's in my account. So now, if you're feeling excited to begin such an account and the possibility of becoming your own banker, if you're feeling ready to begin and you would like to work together, please reach out to me. You can reach me at Valerie@alphaomegawealth.com. You can check out my website at infinitebankingnorthwest.com. I otherwise hope that your 2025 is starting off amazing, and I hope that you make this the best year yet. Thank you so much for listening. Take care.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.